Hello guys, my name is Piers and today I want to talk about entity framework and the repository pattern. It's a discussion with a lot of heat, and the people against using a repository pattern on top of entity framework is that the entity framework, and more specifically the DB sets of entity framework, already implement the repository pattern, and they are actually right. But I don't think the discussion should be if you should implement the repository pattern on top of entity framework, but if you want to have another layer, so you can be more cautious about what you expose and don't expose the whole DB set. And I think that the name repository that we give when we wrap the DB context and abstract it has a lot to do with this heated discussion, but let me show you what I mean with some examples. Now, first of all, let's see what I have here. Today we're doing haircuts, so we have a haircuts application and an API to access that haircuts application. And in my domain I have a customer. A customer has an ID, a name, and a list of appointments. And we have an appointment which has an ID, a date, time, and a customer ID because each appointment belongs to a customer. Now I also, in my infrastructure project, I have an app.db context and I have two DB set, a DB set of customer and a DB set of an appointment. So let me show you what Eric Evans has to say about the repository pattern and how he defines it. Okay, he says that for each type of an object that needs global access, create an object that can provide the illusion of an in-memory collection of all objects of that type. So for customers, we have a DB set of customers. Set up access through a well-known global interface, provide methods to add, remove object, which will encapsulate the actual insertion of removal of data in the data store. So I can actually go and say customers.add, customers.delete, customers.update. So pretty much a DB set implements the repository pattern. But let me show you what's the problem if we expose to the ones who want to use our data access classes the whole DB context. So I have in my program an endpoint for adding an appointment to a customer. So I call the customer I take the customer from the DB context with its ID, and then I call the add appointment method of the customer, and then I save the changes. Now the add appointment method of the customer, if you can see, has some business rules. For example, if the appointment day is, if we already have an appointment for that day, we don't allow to have a second one, and we throw an exception with a message to haircuts on the same day. If the daytime of the appointment is in Sunday, we also throw an exception and we say, hey, we need to rest. So the process of adding an appointment to the customer has some business logic. Now, since I expose the whole DB context, because maybe I want also the DB set of appointments to query appointments at some time. For example, I have a get endpoint which I can get all the appointments and filter with some parameters and do my paging, etc., whatever. Now nothing can stop me from go there, and instead of using the customer.addAppointment method, I can go directly, remove that, and I can say var appointment equals with new appointment. I can have an ID, let's say new ID, customer ID, and the date, time. And now I add it to my database an appointment which can be on Sunday, which is not allowed by our rules. So the customer will go for a haircut and the store will be closed or something. We have violated our business rules. So I think that's the problem with exposing the whole DB context, and that's why repositories come to play. So it's not about the repository pattern per se, but it's about having a way to wrap the DB context and expose only what we want to, so we can be sure that each time we make a change, so we can be sure that every time we change the state of our system, it all goes through our business logic. So let's implement the right repository, and one small thing here, I can have an appointment be more strict so that it wouldn't have a customer ID, and I can set the appointment to be as a known entity type in my DB context configuration, but it all goes down to the same thing. We don't want to allow anyone to add an appointment if they don't go through that add appointment method of the customer, which has our business rules. So I will create a folder called repositories, And in here I will create a customer repository, and I will actually call it customer right repository because we will use this only for our rights. Let me copy and paste some code so you don't have to see me typing it. Okay, now we have our repository. We have a get by ID async, and update the save changes async. Now I will also create an interface for that repository. Have our customer repository implement our interface, and now I can go in my endpoint and let me remove all this and inject our new repository. And now I can go and say var customer equals with repository get by ID async. Then I can add my appointment, so add appointment, new appointment with a new ID and that date time from the request. Now let's imagine that that's not null, and finally let's save our changes, so repository dot save changes async, and let's await that. And now you could say that, okay, but I still can inject and use the appdb context, and you are right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that appdb context internal. So that's internal. Our customer repository should also be internal. And now you can see if I try to inject in my API the appdb context, I get an error. And I get the same from getting the appointments. And now you can also have a repository for querying stuff, an appointment repository just for queries, or if you prefer to use every time a DB set every time you want to query something. For example, you don't want to wrap that around the repository, you want to work directly with the DB set. You can go and make, for example, an interface. A lot of ways to do that. I can say that I have a public interface. Let's call that iappdb context, and now I can expose the DB set of customers and the DB set of the appointments, and have my appdb context implement the iappdb context as well. And now I can inject the iappdb context, and I have access to the DB set, but I don't have anywhere the option to save any changes. So in here one can do anything they want with the DB sets, but they can actually persist anything. So that was all pretty much. The main point is the same. I think that when people say that you should use a repository on top of Entity Framework, it's not about implementing the repository pattern per se, but more about to not give full access to your database through the appdb context, and be sure that when you persist some state, it went through your application logic. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching and have a nice one.